when a real estate agent tries to sell a haunted house. The house was located on a street called Rockadundy Road in Hampton, Massachusetts. The surrounding area is enveloped in dense New England forests, and Rockadundy Road was no exception. It's a stretch of unpaved road through dark woods that eventually leads into Stratford, Connecticut. There were several homes on this road, and one of them was for sale. The family asked my real estate agency to help sell it, and I drew the short end of the straw on this one. When I arrived at the house, my first thought was, why would anyone want to live out here in the boonies? I scowled at the dirt that clung to my car from traveling down the unpaved road. I wondered where the closest car wash was when I approached the front door and knocked. A wiry-looking man with a balding scalp and thick glasses welcomed me inside. He showed me around the house. Despite the fact that it was built in the 1800s, its interior was beautiful. Nice hardwood floors and crisp, clean walls. The house came with 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and with the family asking so little for it, it was basically a steal. The homeowner gave me a tour of the house as well as a list of things to tell my clients: septic system, knob and tube, electrical wiring, etc. Our footsteps clacked on the hardwood floor as he showed me all the lighting fixtures and electrical outlets. I'll spare you from any further jargon that's associated with home inspection for the sake of the story. The homeowner took his leave, but before he did, he turned to me and asked, "Do you believe in ghosts?" I bit my tongue. Such beliefs were unacceptable in my profession. When I politely told him no, he merely shrugged his shoulders and climbed in his truck. I watched his vehicle kick up a storm of dust as he disappeared down the road. That was the last time I saw the homeowner. I glanced at my watch. The open house I was hosting today was supposed to start at noon. I had 2 hours to myself in the middle of nowhere. I grabbed the Kindle from my car and headed back inside. I'm the type of person that needs silence when reading. There are people who can read while the TV's on, and others who can read in bustling cafes. I preferred my reading time to be quiet. Otherwise, I'd read through paragraphs upon paragraphs without absorbing anything. It was during my reading time when I first noticed it, the complete silence of the place. It wasn't just any silence. It was like there was an actual absence of sound. I was accustomed to hearing cars outside and neighbors walking their barking dogs, but here I heard nothing. Not even the sound of birds singing in nature. I could only hear my heart faintly beating in my chest. I also noticed that it was quite chilly in here. The spacious rooms and lack of furniture must have created some sort of draft in the house. My teeth chattered, so I zipped up my coat to my chin and continued to read. When I felt like I couldn't bear it any longer, I stood up and went to go find the thermostat. The thermostat was located near the door of the basement. I cranked it up to 75 when I heard a sudden whooshing noise coming from downstairs. My heart skipped a beat. It sounded like there was a faucet running in the basement. I swung open the door, and the uninviting darkness of the basement greeted me. I fumbled for the light switch and descended down the rickety wooden stairs. The basement was unfinished and creepy looking. The single light bulb did a poor job at illumination, and the corners of the room were swallowed by darkness. Furniture that had been left behind by the previous family had been covered with grimy white sheets. They watched on like silent specters as I approached the source of the noise. A sink near the washing machine and dryer. Not wanting to spend too much time down here, I hurried over and spun the valve shut. As I hustled up the stairs, I got that weird feeling you get as a child, that there was a monster lurking at the bottom of the steps, waiting for me to turn around. I slammed the door shut, fighting the urge to glance over my shoulder. I rested my back against the door to the basement and took several deep breaths. The hair all over my body pricked as I chased away the grips of old childhood fears. I was an adult now. I could rationalize. I had just started to calm down when I heard the front door swing open, followed by the sound of footsteps on the hardwood floor. Clack, clack, clack. They were heading in my direction. Thinking it was the homeowner, as it was still too early for clients, I stepped around the corner to meet him. I was surprised to see nobody standing there. The door, however, was wide open and was currently letting a few leaves blow in from the outside. I called out timidly, "Hello?" When there was no answer, I closed the door and decided to do a sweep of the house. in case someone had decided to come in. I nervously poked my head in every room. They were all empty. I sat back down with my Kindle and thought about what the homeowner had asked me. "Do you believe in ghosts?" It echoed in my head. I shuddered. I couldn't sell a haunted house. My company wouldn't even acknowledge it, let alone accept it. Telling a client that the house they were looking at was potentially haunted was a sure way to lose a sale. I couldn't afford to lose a sale, not in this economy. So I did what any salesperson would do. I would lie. The next hour was as quiet as the previous one had been. I started to think that I merely hallucinated the sounds of the footsteps. My rational mind told me that the door had opened on its own, and since I was still shaking off the irrational fear of a monster in the basement, my hearing had just created the sensation of footsteps on its own. As for the running water, there was probably some weird trip between the thermostat and the faucet downstairs, if that made sense. I had another light scare when there was a knock at the door. Thankfully, there was someone there. A young couple looking to buy the house. I invited them in and showed them around. They were impressed with the house and its location. They had a baby on the way and wanted to raise it in a quiet environment. Things were going smoothly until the lights started to flicker. When the husband looked at me for an explanation, I told him, "With older houses such as this, you sometimes face problems with the wiring. This one, for example, was built with knob and tube wiring. The previous families never had an issue with it, but I'm sure an electrician could be called in to take a look at it." That's basically how my open house went. There would be some weird phenomenon and I would have to debunk it on the spot. And at the end of it, I even convinced myself that there was nothing paranormal going on with the house. Several times during my appointments with clients, a faucet would turn on. Sometimes it was the basement sink, but mostly it was the kitchen sink that turned itself on. As I went over to it to turn it off, I told them that there was a small problem with the plumbing and that a plumber would be able to fix it. There was a few instances of hearing the sounds of footsteps or rustling. I would then assure my clients that it was nothing more than the house settling in or the sound of squirrels running around on the roof. I was surprisingly good at covering this ghost's tracks. I think I even made up a few words that would put my clients' nerves at ease. Once I had successfully wrapped up my session, I was anxious to get home. The frigidness of the house had left my bones achy and in need of a hot shower. I gathered my belongings and started heading out when I caught a glimpse of a pair of shoes at the top of the stairs. My eyes slowly shifted to the top of the stairs, where a young boy of about 5 years old stood on the second-floor landing. The boy was wearing faded overalls and was sporting a homemade bowl cut. He smirked at me in a playful way, like kids do when they have a secret to tell. "Hello," I called to him in a soft voice. "Did your parents leave you behind?" He didn't answer me, but I kept asking him questions as I slowly climbed the stairs towards him. "What is your name? Where is your mom and dad?" When I got to about halfway up the stairs, the boy let out a high-pitched giggle and scampered down the hallway. Not thinking much of it, I followed him. When I climbed the final step, I found him waiting outside one of the bedrooms. He drew a finger to his lips in a shushing motion, then ran into the room. I let out a sigh of frustration and chased him into the room. I had only been a few strides behind him, but it was like he had vanished into thin air. I searched the empty space. I poked my head into the closet. I even banged my hand around the walls, looking for a trapdoor this kid could have been hiding in. I didn't find the young boy, but I did find something. Out in the hallway, a folded piece of paper had been left behind. When I picked it up and inspected it, there was a note on it, written in the scrawling penmanship of a young child. "Stay away from Sarah." I was baffled and a little creeped out. Hearing stuff was one thing, but actually seeing another person and finding notes was an entirely different game. I left the house in a hurry and peeled away from the dirt road, away from the young boy and Sarah, whoever she was. When I got home that night, I took a long hot shower trying to forget the events of the day. The image of the creepy boy burned into my retina, and the sound of his laughter echoed in my ears. I was afraid of closing my eyes for too long in fear of coming face to face with the boy, or something much worse. My fear bubbled inside me like a fever. I took out my laptop and began researching Rockadundy Road. I had several hits of urban legends surrounding that place, so I began reading through the accounts, trying to separate the facts from fiction. Turns out Rockadundy Road is believed to be a very haunted place. There are witnesses who had seen strange lights in the woods and nooses hanging from trees. They also reported phantom cars that had tried to run them off the road. There's a lake nearby where a girl drowned. Witnesses claim to have seen this girl sitting on the rocks on the opposite side of the lake in light of the full moon. There is also a cemetery on Rockadundy, where various people reported a feeling of uneasiness. The more I sifted through the stories, the more afraid I became. I came across 2 stories that supported what I saw. One was about a young boy who was killed on the road by a drunk driver. The other was about a woman who lived near the cemetery mentioned above. Rumor has it that late-night motorists would experience car troubles in front of the cemetery. While they were busy trying to start their car, this woman would come out of the woods wielding a hatchet. And her name was Sarah.